Now, interior ministers from European Union member states are meeting in Brussels to discuss asylum and immigration. They're trying to make progress on long-stalled reforms of the bloc's policy on the issue. Countries have so far failed to find a common position on the contentious issue. Leaders of frontline states, including Italy and Greece, say they can no longer deal with the large numbers of people arriving on their shores. Destination countries like Germany say they're also struggling.
Several EU countries are feeling the strain from an increase in immigration. Germany reported a spike in asylum seekers during the first half of this year. And just in the last few weeks, there were reports of more and more migrants coming to Germany via Poland and the Czech Republic from Russia and Belarus. The island of Lampedusa in Italy also saw a surge. Thousands of people arrived this month. People arrive into the EU for a range of reasons, whether it's fleeing war, poverty or persecution. In 2022, nearly 1 million people asked for asylum in the EU. This is the highest number since 2015 and 16, when millions of refugees and migrants came to the EU. Most first applications in 2022 were registered in Germany, in France and in Spain. But that's not where most migrants initially arrive. There are different routes to the EU. Migrants who cross irregularly over the Mediterranean Sea arrive in Italy and Greece. Others attempt to enter via the land route through the Western Balkans. Both land and sea routes are dangerous, but crossing the Mediterranean has proven especially deadly. Thousands drown every year. EU border countries where most migrants arrive want relief. They say other EU countries should help share the burden. But how to do this has created deep divisions. EU leaders want to make a more binding pact to relocate migrants evenly throughout the bloc. But not all member states agree. EU lawmakers are also at odds over a crisis regulation. It could be applied when large numbers of migrants head towards Europe and allows member states to relax certain rules. Germany insists on a high protection level for human rights. Other states want more flexibility. Differences that leave asylum reform negotiations deadlocked.
All right, let's bring in our correspondent in Brussels, Bernd Riegert. Bernd, great to see you. Now, you're following the meeting today. What do we expect to come out of it?
The Home Affairs ministers of the European Union are quite optimistic that they will eventually finalize the new pact on migration, as it is called. There's only one piece missing, and this is an emergency clause that would kick in if the numbers got suddenly very high. There's still some dispute going on about this, but as I said, there's optimism that at the end of the day they will finalize this. The pact itself is designed to bring faster procedures at the external borders of the EU, so in Italy and Greece, and make it easier to push back migrants after a very short procedure. And there will also be, for the first time, a mandatory relocation scheme for all member states with certain quotas. This is quite new, and that was the revolutionary breakthrough, if you will, in June. But the pact as such is not designed to prevent migration as such. The European Parliament has also a say. Negotiations will start soon, and then it will take 2 years until the pact actually kicks in and will have some results on the ground. And Manfred Weber, the head of the Christian Democrats, the biggest group in Parliament, told DW that the pact will not keep all migrants out of Europe in general.
Look to Ukraine. We are helping in the moment 3 million Ukrainian refugees in the European Union. That is an amazing number. No one else is doing so. So we have to be a continent who helps people who really need help. But on the other hand, it's clear that the smugglers, the mafia, the organized crime is really pushing a lot of people through the Mediterranean route, first of all, and that has to be stopped.
Now, Bernd, is there much agreement among EU members on how to progress at all on this issue?
Yeah, all member states actually agree that they need more agreements, more contracts, more memoranda of understanding with transit states and states of origin of these migrants, especially in North Africa. So the EU finalized just a deal with Tunisia. There's one with Libya, and negotiations are going on with Morocco and also Egypt. And also the agreement with Turkey has to be refreshed, because only if these countries hold back the smugglers and the migrants, then the numbers in Europe will come down. This is the calculation in Europe. These migrant pacts and contracts with North Africa are also not uncritical, or they are also disputed, because you have to deal with autocratic states and states in chaos like Libya.
Thanks, Bernd. DW correspondent in Brussels, Bernd Riegert. Well, for more on this topic, we're joined now by Marie Walter-Franke, Research Fellow of Migration Management at the German Council on Foreign Relations. Welcome to DW News. So, member states in southern Europe, like Italy, have called for solidarity from the rest of the bloc. Have their calls been answered?
Yes, hello, and then hello from Brussels, where I'm following this very closely. So indeed, a part of this negotiation going on the crisis regulation at the moment is really about this crux of how solidarity between member states can work under pressure. What we've seen in Lampedusa is a crisis where, of course, a lot of people are arriving because of the weather, because of the instability in the neighboring countries. And Italy should not be alone dealing with this crisis, nor should Malta or Cyprus. But Italy especially is not really overrun. It's also a crisis that's being leveraged also in these negotiations. So no, what we see is that we're coming to a compromise where everybody has to make room for everyone else's priorities. And as your correspondent rightly said, everybody's quite optimistic that we might find a compromise so that things with the new pact can move forward.
Why does the European Union struggle so much in dealing with migration?
Why? Well, because all of the interests of the European countries are different, are you very well aware. So it's always a very complicated exercise to find the right balance between the interests of states that are at the external border of the European Union, that face the bunch of the work in terms of controlling the external borders. They also are under pressure from member states that are more in the middle of Europe, that want them to register people and also to offer them asylum instead of letting them travel on. So you have these different interests. You also have different attitudes toward migration, different levels of instrumentalization, polarizations also. Now we see in Germany, emotions are running very, very high in the context of the upcoming elections. So it's also always, when things at home are complicated, politicians are under a lot of pressure. And then, of course, a lot of the things that we need are not in our hands. It's not just within the European Union. We need solutions. We need solutions with the countries of origin. So that's why the Vice President of the Commission now is in Cote d'Ivoire and Guinea to speak with these governments to try to see what they can offer them. Same in Northern Africa, as your correspondent said. But the problem is that these countries don't necessarily have reasons to humor the European Union, and the European Union doesn't always have attractive offers for them.
You mentioned Germany there. Germany is debating fixed border controls on their eastern border. We've been talking a lot about the EU's external borders, but we're talking about actually an internal border now. So is that really a long-term solution, considering it's an internal border within the European Union?
So internal border controls in the European Union are never a long-term solution. They're always short-term crisis responses. But sometimes, nothing is more permanent than the temporary. So we've seen several EU countries that have kept these border controls. Germany has two on the border with Austria, because that's the modus operandi that these two countries have found. borders, controlling the borders within the European Union, it's not necessarily something that's wrong in itself. There are a couple of advantages to that, but also disadvantages. So the advantages is that you can disrupt the routes of the smugglers and increase for a short time the number of people that are intercepted. And so smugglers be identified and people needing protection that are registered and that can place their asylum claims. Unofficially, you also see pushbacks, which is not within the rules, so that's not acceptable. But you could say from a real political standpoint, that's also what happens when you have border controls. Now it has a lot of its disadvantages. You have to notify them. They have to be also negotiated with the other EU members, with the partners. They tend to deroute and not to prevent arrivals, and they are very costly. And you need a lot of policemen to do that. So that's we now have a decision on this in Germany, and it's good because of the emotions are so high. Every statement coming from the Interior Ministry and the other parts of government have been really under a lot of scrutiny. So it's good that there's clarity now.
Marie Walter-Franke, migration researcher. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, for more on the perspective in Germany, let's cross over to DW correspondent Benjamin Alvarez-Gruber at our parliamentary studio here in Berlin. Benjamin, great to see you. So tell us, what is the key sticking point for Germany in this debate?
Well, German Interior Minister Nancy Faeser said that she's confident that there will be a deal now in Brussels. They've been late talks on Wednesday, and we expect this also to be a topic today when the Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani meets with his German counterpart Annalena Baerbock. What Germany is saying, a country that is in talks with other neighbors, with Poland, with the Czech Republic, the topic of migration here has been big also in the public debate, because what Nancy Faeser has been suggesting is that there should be stationary border controls with Poland, with the Czech Republic. But there has been criticism on this measure. So that is what she was saying, that it needs to be a fair share, there needs to be talks. She said she's confident that there will be a resolution today, that there will be an agreement within the other European countries. But what it's important here also to state that there are indeed elections coming up, and of course that also is shaping the conversation, as law and order is a typical talking point also here, not only in Berlin, but also in other elections and other campaigns that are taking part.
Benjamin, let's actually talk a little bit more about that. How big of an issue is migration in these elections?
It is a big topic. We see that the AfD, the far-right German party, has been using this story over and over with migration, saying that Germany is not capable of getting more refugees. There are elections coming up in Bavaria, in the southern part of the countries, where we have temporary border control since 2015 going on the border to Austria, and we have these elections coming up in Bavaria. State Premier Markus Söder has been using the topic of law and order, saying if the border of the European Union cannot be protected, we need to protect the border here in Bavaria. So we expect this to continue being a topic here.
How has Germany responded to calls of solidarity when it comes to taking in migrants from border countries like Italy, for example?
We expect, and we can see that with the talks that Annalena Baerbock will have with her Italian foreign minister, they'll also address this letter that Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, sent German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, complaining also on the German government and the role that it is playing when it comes to NGOs. Germany has been saying that it will try to work together to have a fair share, but we also have to remember the words of the German President, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, who recently said that the German society is on a capacity when it comes to getting more refugees into it. Germany says, and that's what the Interior Minister has been saying, there needs to be protection, there needs to be especially protection also for families coming to this country, but this needs to be resolved with the other countries, because in the Schengen area, where they can move freely, where people can move freely, and you have these border controls, you of course have to talk to the neighboring countries. And Nancy Faeser has been an opponent of stationary border controls for a long time, saying they're inefficient, that they're expensive, that there's not the capacity, that you need a lot of police officers. That's what the police union has been criticizing as well. Now there's been a turn, because there's also has been this pressure. And then we're back on the topic of the elections coming up and of the political pressure for them to take a clearer stance of saying that this needs to be talked with other European members, and that's why the meeting today of the European interior ministers happening in Brussels will be so important, not only for Germany but also in Europe on dealing with migration.
Thanks, Benjamin. DW's Benjamin Alvarez-Gruber in Berlin. Now, one of the countries saying they can no longer deal with the number of people arriving is Greece. The camp on the Greek island of Lesbos has become a symbol of the difficulties facing the EU's migration policy. Our correspondent, Emily Sherwin, met with some of the people there.
Emmanuel Lojong radiates positivity. That's not always easy for a migrant living on Lesbos. Lojong works as a volunteer in the Parea Community Center on the Greek island, which has been an asylum hotspot for years. He's helping with security at lunch today. Lojong is from war-torn South Sudan and arrived on Lesbos 5 months ago. He applied for asylum and for relocation to another EU country.
The hardest thing that we are facing inside the camp is only about the process. It's only about the process, the delayment of the asylum process, and we have no any other option. We have nowhere to go. We can't go back and we can't go ahead unless if you finish your process.
The center where Lojong volunteers is run by NGOs. For many migrants, it's a refuge, especially because many get stuck waiting in the camp and in the asylum process for years. This summer has brought a huge wave of new arrivals to Lesbos. Official statistics show the camp is already over capacity. Since July, more than 1,300 people have arrived each month, over 4 times more than before. The Greek authorities rejected our request for access to the camp, saying they currently have too much work due to mass arrivals. Back in the community center, the NGO Europe Cares is concerned the situation on Lesbos could deteriorate.
With so many new arrivals, the housing capacity of the camp is decreasing more and more. They started to use also the wrap hosts, which are huge tents where people are living together in smaller rooms, where the hygiene conditions are a lot worse than in the other housing units. And there is no AC, no fan, so it is really hot inside as well.
The NGO says it is already providing food packages to over 400 people every week. In May, the Greek Migration Ministry decided that the camp will no longer feed people whose asylum requests are not currently being processed. In the long wait for asylum in Europe, Emmanuel Lojong is using music to keep up his spirits. He wants the lyrics to his songs to give comfort and courage to his fellow migrants.
No condition is permanent. Don't think too much. Everything is having time. So if the time comes, everything will be fine.
Now, the winners of this year's Right Livelihood Award have been announced. The award, known as the Alternative Nobel Peace Prize, honours activists and organisations making the world a better place. It's gone to 2 people and 2 organisations this year. The people are Eunice Brookman-Amissah from Ghana, whose pioneering discussions on women's reproductive rights in Africa paved the way for improved and safe abortion access, and to Phyllis Omido from Kenya, who fights for environmental protection. The groups are the environmental advocacy group Mother Nature Cambodia and SOS Mediterrannee for its rescue missions in the Mediterranean off the coast of Libya. The NGO says it has saved tens of thousands of migrants from drowning this year. Here's a closer look at their work.
This is the Ocean Viking. The ship and its crew carry out SOS Mediterranee's mission to save those at risk in the dangerous crossing of the Mediterranean Sea, where thousands die each year after their boats capsize. This year alone, SOS Mediterrannee helped rescue nearly 40,000 people. The rescue ship operates mainly off the coast of Libya. That's the launching point for many of the overcrowded, often unseaworthy vessels used by smugglers to get people across. It then takes the migrants it's rescued to nearby Italian ports. SOS Mediterranee's Director General says she hopes the Right Livelihood Award will help shine a light on the problem.
Well, I would like people to realize that the situation in the central Mediterranean Sea is still going on, that there are still a lot of people fleeing Libya and Tunisia now and trying to find a safe space somewhere else, and that they are risking their lives to do so. And this year, for example, there's almost over 2,500 recorded deaths already, and that people shouldn't have to risk their life to be able to look for safety. So it's for me, it's the main issue.
But Italy has pushed back. Far-right and anti-immigration Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni wants to stop NGO ships from acting as ferry boats for migrants. On multiple occasions, Italian authorities have refused to let the Ocean Viking dock in certain ports. But SOS Méditerranée is undeterred. The Ocean Viking sails on, trying to make the crossing less deadly for those in search of a better life.
Well, you saw SOS Mediterranee's Executive Director, Caroline Abou-Saada, in that report. I'm happy to say she joins me now. Congratulations. What does it mean to win this award?
It's a lot of emotions. It's a lot of mixed feelings of emotion, happiness, and at the same time, it's sad that we still have to be there and to rescue people.
Give us a sense of how difficult your work is at the moment.
Well, 2023 has been a very deadly year. We are extremely worried and concerned. As I mentioned in the report, there's over 2,500 deaths recorded. We know there's a lot of invisible shipwrecks as well, so we know the death toll is much bigger than that. The situation in Libya is not improving. The situation in Tunisia is getting worse for people trying to flee. So it's extremely worrying, and we think this award is somehow a chance to highlight the plight of the people trying to flee both Tunisia and Libya.
And why do you do this work?
Because I couldn't be able to look at myself if I wasn't doing that. I have the chance to work with an amazing team, and we all have the same, I would say, drive to do something at our level. I think it's extremely important to be able to do so if we can.
Despite winning this award, we heard in the report that you do have your critics. Italy accuses you of operating a ferry service for migrants. How would you respond to that?
I would say that at the moment, NGOs are only performing less than 10% of the rescue in the central Mediterranean. So 90% of the rescues are actually being done by other actors like the Coast Guard or commercial shipping. I don't think people are really fleeing the situation and the torture and the ill treatments and the forced work in Tunisia and in Libya just to get a ferry that is 69 meters long and very difficult to actually catch on the international waters.
Many countries are now discussing extending the detention period of migrants from 12 to 20 weeks during a crisis. What would that mean for people arriving in Europe?
The thing is that we as an organization don't talk about migrants. We're actually rescuing people, whatever their legal status is going to be afterwards. We just hope that people will be treated as humanely as possible, like any human being should actually be. And indeed, the worsening of the conditions on arrival are also worrying us.
Thank you so much for joining us. We wish you well. And congratulations again on winning the Right Livelihood Award. Caroline Abou-Saada, Executive Director of SOS Mediterrannee.
Thank you.